Living in the Past is a Turtle, Mysteries of Azeroth, and Everlook Broadcasting production. This is Living in the Past, your Everlook Broadcasting Company weekly show about all things Turtle, Mysteries of Azeroth. Today is Friday, January 12th, 2024, and I'm Dan, your host for the next hour. Happy Friday once again, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to have you here today. Not only do you get me tonight, but coming up as a reminder, next Tuesday, that's Tuesday here in just a couple of days, you're going to have me for some trivia. That starts Tuesday afternoon Eastern time, so depending upon where you are in the world, make sure you check the time zone over on the Discord announcement. I shouldn't say announcement, the scheduled event. There you go. It should have more information on when we're going to be doing trivia. It will be on the PvE server, so everyone can go ahead and talk to each other. We're going to have it in the Trivia Night channel once again, so look forward to that. I have new questions ready to go. I didn't even get through a third of my questions from our Trivia Night back in December, but yet I have more, and I will have lots more. So there will be no lack of trivia, and this time we actually have some turtle currency to put up for the winner. So, study your lore. Get ready with your random facts. I'm not saying what the categories are yet. I want to keep it fun. But it will be over in the Trivia Night channel in-game on the PvE server, so do keep that in mind. Now, for tonight, we have a jam-packed show here. Segment 2 here is going to be a long one. A little over a half hour. Akalix was kind enough to sit down and talk to me. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about what's going on with the alternative tier sets. And now that we've started the process here on Turtle, the class council. So Akalix was kind enough to sit down with just over a half hour of conversation with me and go through so many details. So the first and third segments here for today are going to be a little bit shorter. I still want to include plenty of music in the broadcast, so we are going to try and squeeze in 6 songs. Maybe the show goes a little late. Maybe the first and third segments are just a little tiny. We'll see. We'll see how things pan out as I get this stuff put together for you all here. But needless to say, this interview was really eye-opening as to what the process is and what's going on with the alternative tier sets and with the class changes. We do get some really good tidbits of information. And while obviously no hard dates have been set yet for anything in this regard, getting to know more about the process of exactly how these Class 2.0 changes are being investigated, being suggested, and then being implemented layer by layer, it gives me a lot of hope that this is a good process, a healthy process for the server and for the community. So look forward to that. That's going to be the entirety of segment 2 here of the show. And like I said, it goes about a half hour. So hopefully if I time things up right, we're not going to go too far over that hour mark that I try to hit for each broadcast. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the music for today, because I'm going to go through both of the breaks right now. I didn't include break information at the end of segment 2 because I didn't have it planned yet at the time, and I was recording with Akalix, and I didn't want to hold him up too much longer than I had to, at least, But we are going to go through that right now. So, for our first break coming up here in just a few minutes, both breaks are going to be energy alternative Alt rock is something that most people kind of enjoy as this generic thing that we all experience on the radio or in music videos. However, even back through the 80s and 90s, alternative was being really heavily explored with greater levels of energy and greater amounts of instruments suddenly being included. And when kind of that heavier rock alt came out and was really pumping, it felt great. It was something I really enjoyed. So to open here for our first break, we have Hash Pipe by Weezer. Ace of Spades, which isn't really alternative, to be honest. It's just really heavy rock and has that really good energy. But Ace of Spades by Motorhead, one of my favorites in that kind of style. And then Paralyzer by Finger 11. Solid tracks. And then for our second break, after the Acolyx interview, we're going to have a little more of the softer or more melodic, I might say, side of the alt-rock spectrum. No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age. The Middle by Jimmy Eat World, which is a little more poppy, honestly, a little more 2000s poppy than anything else. And then Wish You Were Here, one of my favorite early Incubus tracks of all time. Wish You Were Here. Such a wonderful, wonderful song. So look forward to those. Those are going to be our musical breaks for tonight. Now, before we get to those breaks, I did want to comment that one thing I talked about a lot last week was the Chronicles of the Second War mod that came out for Warcraft 3 last week on Friday. I got some time over the weekend to play through it. The campaign was stunning. They did make some choices that honestly I wouldn't have, or I don't necessarily agree with at all. However, the fact that they made the effort to try and interpret what Warcraft 3 would look like now, while also including the Chronicles franchise, that's huge. So, incredible props to them. Glad they did, and I've actually been sinking a little extra time into Warcraft 3 as well because of that, which has been a joy and a curse, because RTS tends to suck my brain away just a little bit. Anywho, we need to go ahead and get to our first break of the night. So, enjoy the music. Like I said before, Hash Pipe by Weezer, Ace of Spades by Motorhead, and Paralyzer by Finger 11. Our interview with Acolyx, CM here at Turtle, coming up right after the break. The musical tracks for this episode have been removed due to YouTube copyright. To listen to the full episodes with music, tune in to Everlook Broadcasting every Friday with the in-game radio widget. Welcome back to Living in the Past with myself, Dan. It is the second segment of our Friday show. Welcome back to it here. And we are with Acolyx, the one and only, our community manager, the person who is the face of Turtle many times. You've heard him talking so many places. Acolyx, how are you this evening?
I'm doing pretty well. I've had a pretty lovely day. It's been a bit cold out, so I've been mostly sticking inside. But yeah, doing well.
In setting this up, you mentioned you were spending time with the girlfriend, getting some free time now that classes are relaxed a little bit. That's wonderful to hear. Hopefully you've been enjoying your day today.
Yes.
Wonderful. Now, you're here specifically because I really wanted to talk a little more about the alternative tier sets and where we are with them. Back in October with the Dragon's Post, we got really excited for it. Did end up doing an interview with one of the wonderful staff members who has been working on designing a lot of the alternative tier sets. And then unfortunately, it didn't happen with 117.1. So just to kind of start off things here, where are we with the alternative tier sets? Do we have kind of a point of completion that they're at? What can you tell us about where they are right now?
So if I give an exact patch number, there will be lightning and thunder that come crashing in through my window as I get smitten for it. But
one of the devs is going to throw a hammer at your head from across the planet somewhere.
I will suddenly notice a large number of notifications appearing. But
Kaboom.
I can say that It should be before 1.18. It would be very surprising to me if it took until 1.18. But the main thing that I could really say for it is the idea that we sort of want it to go alongside with, maybe a little bit after, but definitely not before Class Changes 2 is implemented. And that's because alternative tier sets are going to be, some of their balance is going to be designed around how the class changes turn out. We don't want to, for example, have an alternative tier set where the 8-piece for Paladin from Nexramus gives you, oh, your Lay on Hands now has a 1-minute cooldown, and then Class Changes 2 is Lay on Hands has been removed. So, like, that'd be a very lame experience to have one patch where this changes in, and then all of a sudden it's completely changed again. So, we want to sort of be, once the class design and balance is a lot more cleared up and a lot more stabilized after Class Changes 2 is done, then we can sort of look into, okay, now how can we set up these alternative tier sets to make different specs feel good? How can we make the gearing experience feel better for various sets? And sort of like, how can we make these sets good for various people?
Sure. Obviously, you said a lot of very important things here, but I'm going to highlight the thing that the community is going to latch on to, which is they want to give paladins more.
Oh, of course.
So I couldn't help myself there.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been shown the picture that is the Turtle Class Design Palace server icon. It is quite literally a paladin hammer with a giant red circle around it and a big line through it.
We will not buff paladins again. That is a
Surely
promise.
Surely we are not buffing ret paladins once more.
You know, that's fair. Now, not a lot of us have heard a ton about the alternative tier sets. So you just showed me it. That's magical. I love that so much. Not a lot of us have heard a ton about the 2.0 class changes as an official thing. I know Vrograg just did a feature on that, but this is kind of our first time really hearing a ton publicly on the subject. So can you just give us a broad overview of what the class 2.0 changes are and how the class changes are being implemented? Obviously speaking a little bit about the class council.
So, first of all, we have a good handful, more than 50, of people who applied from our community out of hundreds of applications who we chose as people who were A, qualified, and B, were going to fit under a couple of the categories that we needed of being like respectful, being and somebody who's played on Turtle WoW for a good amount of time and has sort of a reasonable mindset for it. So not someone who's just like, if you are not buffing my class, I don't want to partake. No, it has to be someone who's like, okay, my class has these strengths and has these weaknesses. Some of these strengths we could probably tone down. Some of these weaknesses we could definitely handle. Like, if somebody comes in, yeah, hi, I'm a paladin, I think that we need to buff Holy Strike. Okay, no. But if it's like, okay, I think that this is a little bit strong, but this is a little bit weak, sort of having that understanding of the goal is to find a balance and to find that's good. And to get a little more into just the idea behind it, it's going slow. Because we are going one thing at a time. We're putting something up for discussion, discussing it, taking time for everyone to put in their opinions, and then eventually the community part closes. Staff part, we discuss it a little bit more. Staff part closes, and then eventually it goes to the very top, and a decision's made. And regardless of if that is the exact same decision that the community would have said, or the same one that the staff would have said, it's going to eventually all come down to one decision. And that's just because we have said from the start, it is not going to be a democratic vote on any given change. It's going to be more in a meritocracy style and more in just a general idea of we will discuss the ideas, we will share the ideas, but we're not going to just say, okay, everybody, vote checkmark for doing this change, vote X for not doing this change. Like that, unfortunately, popular vote is not a good way to do game design. If it was, it would be a lot easier, but unfortunately, it's not.
I mean, you could just Twitch plays Pokemon your way through this at that point. Then
you would have quite an interesting server at that point.
Interesting is a way to put it. So
I would call it under the category of fun servers, but I don't even think it would be fun at that point.
So it's not like the class council and the community that's where everything lives. You're still taking everyone's opinion into account on that point, and the class council has their say in especially how a lot of these decisions are starting to be boiled down. But in the end, it does come down to a more closely examined game design perspective and making sure the best choices are made, not just whatever everyone thinks should be made.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned that this is a slow process right now. And while I don't want to say that it needs to hurry, I do know that there has been some anxiety and levels of upset from the community on not seeing the alternative tier sets all of a sudden. So can you give us a good idea of how far along the process is in the discussions with the class council and with the developers? How far along overall are the class 2.0 changes there? How far along are we?
We are like a week or so into discussion, and we have not discussed class balance. And to sort of go into more detail on that, we are tackling issues one at a time. And for example, one of the first issues that we're talking about right now is weapon skill, and how are we going to move forward with that? How are we going to move forward with the weapon skill? How are we going to move forward with racials for weapon skill? Are we going to do that in talents, in books, in change your racial at level 60, in this and that and the other? And there's a lot of different opinions on it, and there's a lot of different correct opinions on it, because you can both be correct in saying that it is very much a RPG core feature to be able to have different strengths when you choose a different race. And it's also very true to be able to say that it sucks that you will always do however percentage, even if it's a small one, less damage than the other guy, even if you do the exact same thing with the exact same gear, because that guy went human and you went night elf because you thought, I don't know, elf woman hot.
So in empathizing with everyone, or at least a majority of the community, I'd say, as a goblin warrior, you just made my butt pucker, like, hard. Can you tell us any more information about how what plans are possibly to change weapon skill? Is that something you can comment on, or is it still in the very early stages?
It's in deliberation currently. I know that it's everybody's opinions have been given, and there's going to be sort of a decision made, and then we're going to finalize on it. I know that on the 8th is when it got locked for public discussion, and then internally for staff discussion, it's been in discussion still, which there is actually some very interesting concepts in there that I very much like, and I think would be something that would make pretty much everyone happy. There's always going to be somebody who says, no, this is awful, but our goal is to make the most enjoyable game for the most people at the end of the day. So
sure.
I think it hasn't been selected yet, but there is a very popular opinion, popular concept that I like, and we might be going forward with. But it's the sort of thing where it's not being done, okay, one day we're going to crank out all of class changes. It's very much being done, okay, we take a couple days to discuss this. Okay.
Sure.
Next, we're going to take a couple days to discuss this. And when we open the server up to full scale, everybody into their class channels start cooking, there's going to be some chaos there for a little bit. But this isn't meant to be something that's done overnight. It's not something that's meant to be done over a weekend. we are looking at balancing an entire game, and that is not something that is a quick process, but it is something where we are trying to do it. And I tried to get it going the best I could here recently.
Sure.
I pushed very hard to get the discussion started because it is the sort of thing that takes time, and it definitely sucked that we weren't able to get it out sooner. We wanted originally to, in summer, be having these discussions. But then one thing after another happened where we have a patch release, we have a population boom, we have this, that, and the other. And yeah, one thing after another came up to where it was never the number one on the priority list. There was always at least one thing above it. And I sort of had to set aside the time to go through those hundreds of applications, read them all, which some people gave amazing applications where they would have, and I'm not even joking, there was one person who had, I believe it was like a 27-page document written up for
so
their...
They wrote a dissertation.
Yeah, they wrote a dissertation on their philosophy behind class design. And there was another person who linked a YouTube video that was just a machinima, like 2008 style machinima of their character, like saying, "I should be class changes. Put me in for class changes." And I just love to think about those two examples just because of the hilarious juxtaposition of seeing them within the same couple of applications, seeing one person's thesis and another person's like 10-second YouTube video.
That's incredible. That's TBC era thoughts too. My goodness. Just to peel back here a little bit. Again, talking about weapon skill in particular. I actually make a joke about it, of course, because warrior and goblin, I have a very specific set of skills there. Yeah. But in all honesty, I can think of very few situations where I wouldn't be at least interested in changes in a certain way. The only situation I could feel I would be legitimately upset is if they were simply removed. Can you tell us if that's an option that might be looked at, or if that's simply not going to happen? You're always going to have some kind of flavor going on as an RPG element. Can you talk more about that?
So I know that there were some people that that advocated for the full removal of weapon skill, in that the idea of it's not fun to just randomly miss, and it's not fun to get a weapon that's an upgrade, except you, because of your race, actually have a downgrade for the better weapon. That's not exactly fun, but overall we wanted to clarify. So we actually, one of the first things we talked about was the overall philosophy behind our class changes and about our game design. And we talked about the fact that we are not trying to homogenize. We are not trying to make every class equal in power, because every class does what they do differently. A warrior does not hit people the same way a paladin does, who does not hit people the same way that a rogue does. And a warlock casting does not do the same as a mage casting. Same with a balanced druid, that sort of idea, where there are a lot of classes that can achieve the same things, right? You'll have a warlock, a mage, a shaman, a druid. You'll have all these casters, but they are accomplishing their goals of doing the damage in a completely different way than each other.
Sure.
And their power budget is completely different as well, because that shaman has a bunch of totems. So you can't make them also do more damage than a mage, because if the mage's power budget is they have arcane intellect and then they do damage, versus a shaman who is able to put down these totems and buff their group and do this, that, and the other, it's not going to be a question of who we are going to bring. You're always going to bring one over the other. So
how exactly do you define the power budget for a shaman who's giving Wind Fury to 3 other warriors and a paladin versus a mage who is giving arcane intellect to other casters? Where is even the math behind that in the first place? It would be next to impossible.
Yeah, it's a very difficult task, but it's a sort of idea of we do not want them to be the exact same, where it's like, okay, I can compare 1-to-1. Every class has one buff they can cast, and then beyond that, they will press these 3 buttons to do their damage rotation. Try to make their numbers as close as possible, and people can play whatever they want. Because that's just not fun.
Hmm.
That's not a dynamic RPG experience. That's which reskin of blast, cast, and run away do I want?
That's
So
legit.
yeah, it's sort of the idea of okay, there are always going to be some weaknesses and some strengths to any given class, and that's one of the biggest philosophies behind it. We don't want to go into Wrath of the Lich King era where there's a lot more sort of gray area between which classes do what, and they're sort of more homogenized. We want to be very clear in the class identity. We are a vanilla plus server, not a Wrath of the Lich King minus server.
Sure, and I think a lot of people will recognize the Wrath Kata era where that serious class homogenization really started happening. So I'm glad you're aware of that. That actually gives me a lot of hope for this process. Speaking of this process, you mentioned that you're just on the general concept changes. Right now, you're not focusing on any classes yet. Is there a class you're going to be focusing on first here? Is there any information that people can look forward to, specific class-wise, that you're going to be hitting first?
I believe that all the classes are going to sort of be opened up at the same time. We're going through the more general ideas right
Mm-hmm.
now, and then we're going to go through like this, that, and then, okay, we've established the general things that apply to all the classes, and then we'll open it up and people will be able to talk about their individual classes and their individual channels, be able to go through all their different ideas there, look through all the ideas that the staff have already put in there, and then talk from there, and yada yada, try to cook on that.
Sure. And you specifically mentioned, I know we kind of bumped on this earlier, but it is based around the Discord in particular. So the class channels that you're talking about are the class channels in Discord.
I'm talking about the channels in the class changes Discord.
Gotcha. Okay, so it is.
I'm not talking about the public Discord where we
Mhm.
do encourage people to share their opinions and all that sort of stuff. I encourage you to share your opinions, share your thoughts, and talk about your class, all that sort of stuff in the community Discord. However, we are doing the majority of our work in the private class changes Discord that there was the application process for and all of that, because one of the biggest key factors is that this Discord is very focused on being productive. There is one off-topic channel and you can discuss whatever else you want there, but beyond that it is on topic. You are being respectful and all that, and that is actually a requirement. Is we are very serious about don't just waste time and don't be there to flame people. If somebody starts being toxic and flaming, everyone was warned that if you start being toxic and being just a pain, it's not just a kick from the Discord that you are risking. You are risking a ban or a temp ban on Turtle. We are taking it very seriously in the class changes Discord. So if someone were to have applied and then just joined and then say they are really, really passionate about rogue tanking, and someone says, a rogue's an assassin, why would they be a tank? That's stupid. And they go, you know what you can do? You can go and things that you can't say on the radio.
The fair. Appreciate that.
They would then be getting removed from the server and possibly also a ban in game, because that is the agreement that everybody said yes to when they joined the server, and everybody got told that when they were sent the invite. Everybody got told that when they joined the server and read the first channel. So everyone should be very aware that it's not the place for toxicity. And if you want to be toxic somewhere, go somewhere else. Like,
so this is being taken very seriously because of the amount of work that's going into it, and the fact that this is going to take some time. You're doing everything in your power to make sure this stays focused.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are going to appreciate hearing that. Obviously, this is going to take a lot of time. This is going to have a large run up to it. And because of that, the alternative tier sets are going to have to wait on this process. But it's not like it's just everyone messing around. This is focused. This is to the point.
Yes.
Back to my previous question, though. When then can people start to look forward to hearing information on these changes that are discussed? obviously you can't say a specific timeline. You mentioned that earlier, but is there a general feeling of when individual pieces of information may be able to be shared, or small overviews that might be able to come out? Anything you can say about that?
So everybody in there is under the agreement that they are not going to be sharing things from in there. It's pretty tight-lipped, sort of, just for the sake of that way everyone can freely express their opinions and talk about things honestly, including things that like other people might be pissed. Why are you talking about like this big secret about our class that gives us this huge DPS increase? It's meant to be honest, it's meant to be accurate, and it's meant to be productive. However, there is the one fun factor of who's in charge of promotion on social media and stuff, and of teasing things and leaking things for Turtle. Hi, I'm right here, and I'm also in that Discord. So I might give a couple of the devs in that channel a bit of a heart attack now and then by, I don't know, maybe you'll have to follow our Twitter at Team Turtle Wow, or maybe you'll have to keep a look at r/Turtle Wow on Reddit, that sort of thing, or maybe even just look at our forums. And who knows, you might just see something posted there regarding class changes, teasing something that's coming out.
There we go. And to be clear too, and I didn't know this up until last like few months or so, Turtle actually has a very large presence on Reddit. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, our subreddit's been doing very well. It's been growing pretty well, and the really entertaining part for me was I a while back I pinged everyone in the Discord with a link to our subreddit. And somebody had pinged me for it and was like, "Why are you linking that? Nobody cares." And I put a link to that message in my personal channel because I wanted to remember it for a minute. And I came back the next week when I had the activity graph for our subreddit, and there was a just nearly straight spike up on that day, and it stayed a good bit up from there. And I just responded with that graph, and I just said, "Are you sure?
Are you sure about that?"
People enjoy engaging in stuff related to Turtle when they get the opportunity to. So that's why we're trying to do more stuff on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. You're not going to get me to call it X. I'm not.
I cannot. I physically am incapable.
I'm too old.
And I think compared to, and not to disparage any other private server project, because honestly, there are so many wonderful projects out there doing their own thing. And it's wonderful to see, but it does feel like when it comes to private servers, Turtle has the most ability for the community to have an impact on it. And obviously, the class council is a huge sign of that. But outside of that, with the Reddit, with the Discord, with so many ways that people can provide feedback and interact with the community, it definitely feels like a Turtle has that special community interaction point that can sometimes be difficult to achieve.
It's been a challenge, but that has been, as community manager, one of my biggest things. And I've been in this role for over a year now, and I've been very much focused on it the entire time. And I focused on it when we were at 2,000 pop, and all the way when we spiked up to the 10,000 Q. Is the idea of, I want the server to feel like you can actually, your voice is heard. I want it to feel like if you say something, people are going to listen. You're not screaming into the void, because the biggest point of pain for me when it comes to playing something like Retail WoW is I feel like I'm not talking to anyone if I say, like, I think Blizzard should do this, or if I, especially in the big one for me is with support, if I have an issue, I feel like, okay, well, hopefully I get an automated response that fixes it, and then otherwise I just have to wait forever and I don't get to talk to someone. Whereas if you open a ticket on Turtle, less than 10 minutes, you're going to have an actual person who responds to your ticket. And yeah, You might get a little template that says, "Greetings, we're going to look into this issue. Have a magical day." That's an actual person who is hitting the button to send that template back to you. And yes, that is a template, but we get hundreds and thousands of tickets every week. So it's not a matter of something where we can just every single ticket write out a little love letter, as much as I would love to, and as much as we used to every single ticket answer by hand. It's a matter of, okay, well, now we answer by hand, but we answer with the same things of, okay, somebody needs to go to the bug tracker, send them to the bug tracker. Somebody needs to go to the forums, go to the forums. So that's been the big thing for me that I think is one of our biggest selling points on Turtle is we feel more intimate than a lot of servers. And I think that also very much helps with the feel of the server, where it is very grounded in the WoW aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
It feels grounded and personal. And part of that is because you can very easily talk to someone. You can very easily get help if you need it. Or you can very easily go on the forums and get a response from someone. If you suggest something and it's a good idea, you'll hear, yeah, we might look into this. Or you'll hear, no, this doesn't align with our vision, so we're not going to do this. And obviously not everyone gets that response, yes.
Sure.
But that's the goal, is people will feel like, okay, there is actually something here. I'm part of this world.
Absolutely. Not to bring up I might say traumatic memories, but I do remember when Karazhan launched and the final boss in Karazhan had some problems. There were some issues.
Months.
But having every time that, my raid group had issues, and anytime, a friend's raid group was having issues with the final boss, actually having a GM come in, look at it, poke and prod at it, figuring out exactly why things are happening the way they are, and then getting concrete responses, or simply saying, hey, this is a bug we can't fix right now, but actually having a person say that, monumentally more gratifying than what responses you get on most other communities, which is, okay, the ticket's open. So it's much appreciated. That's really nice. And I was going to say props to you for managing that. Good work on your part. We are running out of time on the segment here, so I do want to ask, you mentioned that you can't give a timeline specifically for the alternative tier sets or the class changes. You did mention 118, and it sounded like the hopes are either going with that or coming at the same time as that in some way. Yeah?
Hopefully before.
Hopefully before. Okay. Gotcha. And then final question here, and then kind of just give you the floor. Is there anything else you'd want to add about how the class council or class 2.0 changes are being handled? Anything you want to highlight from that? Anything you want the community to be aware of about these things, or the alternative tier sets? Floor is yours for the last couple minutes here.
Really just, yeah, we know that it is not perfect in its current state. We're not going to use this time to just double down on everything that we have currently implemented. We're not going to take this time to go, oh no, this is perfectly balanced. Oh no, this is perfectly balanced. Like, we know that the balance is not perfect on our server currently, and we know that there are things that need to be changed both in the aspects of PvE and PvP. And we're focusing on PvE, but there's also going to try to be some fixes here and there for PvP. And then after PvE is more balanced out, we're going to try to flesh out more on PvP, just because it's a gradual process of getting everything done. But we are working and we are making progress on it. It's just not a matter of something that is done immediately. And it is very likely going to feel a little bit weird at first. So I encourage everyone, when it comes out, don't, the minute that something feels different, just say, oh, this is bad. Give it a little bit of time, see how it settles, and do know that we are not stuck in the way that the meta currently is. Meaning, warriors do not necessarily have to be the top parsers. Ret paladins do not necessarily have to one-shot people. Druid tanks do not necessarily have to be able to heal to 100% HP just because they're chill like that in PvP. hunters maybe won't even have to have a one-button rotation. Who knows?
Okay, let's not get
something
excessive here. Let's calm it down.
I'm a hunter player. I'm allowed to complain about the interesting gameplay that is True Shot.
That's
Auto
fair.
attack.
That's
True
fair.
Shot.
You did, by the way, props to you for also showing up at Rograg's PvP event last month.
Of course.
That was a heckin' good time. I certainly hope Rograg hosts more of those. I hope I get to commentate them too. That was a ton of fun. That was a huge, fun event.
That was quite fun.
With that being said, though, I want to thank you for your time, Akalix. Again, appreciate you opening up a little bit on what's going on here. Again, this stuff is going to take time. Hopefully people understand that. Listeners, please continue voicing your opinions. Look forward to these changes. And when they happen, make sure you take time, digest them, and then feel free to share your thoughts. The forums, Discord, Reddit. The Turtle team is ready to hear your thoughts once we can actually, see these changes and start to really discuss them as a larger community. With that being said, again, Akalix, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day here.
You too.
We'll be right back with our final segment here on Living in the Past, coming up right after this. The musical tracks for this episode have been removed due to YouTube copyright. To listen to the full episodes with music, tune in to Everlook Broadcasting every Friday with the in-game radio widget. Welcome back to Living in the Past. I'm Dan. That was No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age, The Middle by Jimmy Eat World, and Wish You Were Here by Incubus. Again, one of my favorite Incubus tracks of all time. Their first couple releases especially were fire. They were absolutely incredible. Some of the best I've ever heard, especially in that alt-rock kind of category. Once again, thank you to Akalix for coming on and talking to us a bit about not only the class changes, but why it's so important that they get done before we see the alternative tier sets. As much as I want to see them, and I do, I've talked about them so much here, the fact that it's important that they recognize that it's important that they get these changes done first and locked in, gives me hope that these alternative tier sets are going to be the serious breath of fresh air gear-wise that we get to see, especially in those larger early tier raids. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. With that being said, though, just a couple quick reminders on things. Once again, Trivia Night coming up here next week. Check the Discord for more information on the event, and make sure you check with your local time zone when it's going to be. It's going to be early afternoon Eastern time. So if you're over in Europe, it's going to be later in the evening. And if you're over on the West Coast or a little further, it's going to be earlier in the morning. So be aware of that. But all you need to do to participate is be online, in-game, and then be tuned into the radio. You'll be able to hear me for the full hour, and there will be turtle coinage on the line for the top 3 trivia experts. So be ready. Have your thinking caps on. I will give you the categories at the beginning of the event, and we're going to get through as many questions as possible. At least 2 categories, hopefully. With less technical issues this time around, we'll be able to hopefully rapid fire a few more questions. Thank goodness I have fixed the mic clipping issue over on that piece of software, so look forward to crisp, clear voice. Also, we may go long, and if that is the case, maybe I spend some time taking some song requests. So we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But make sure you're tuned into the radio Tuesday, early afternoon Eastern. Be ready. In addition, and I want you all to be thinking about this for next week's show, I'm going to want to talk about some of my own thoughts for class changes. One thing Vrograg mentioned over in his report over on his YouTube page earlier this week was that he hopes that the community talks about their ideas for what they might want to see be represented as class changes in the Discord in the classes channel. Now, that's obviously not where the actual class council is happening, as discussed in the interview with Acalix, but I do appreciate that Vrograg is trying to get people to think and talk more about this, even if they're not directly involved in the process. I like that. I like that a lot. So for next week, I'm going to want to brainstorm a little bit of what I feel might be some healthy changes for the server. Of course, with the context of I've only seen the first couple raid tiers on the server, and while I've raided AQ and Nax on other servers, including live, I haven't on Turtle, so take my thoughts with that grain of salt. However, opinions do matter, even if it's just trying to get thoughts out there. So this is going to be about trying to get everyone to think and discuss a little bit more. We'll specifically be talking about warriors and priests, Shadow Priest in particular, but I might share some thoughts on a few other classes. We'll see. It depends how bold I feel like being. But that's the plan for next week's show. So please keep that in mind. Hope we have some fun with it. With that being said, though, we need to go ahead and wrap up here for the day. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. And again, thank you to Acalix for taking the time as well. Very much appreciate him taking the extra half hour to sit down. Our nostalgia continues, even though today's broadcast is at an end. And I hope you enjoyed the show here today. A huge thank you to the Turtle developers, moderators, staff, and volunteers. Without the entire team's hard work and dedication, we wouldn't have this station or server group. An additional thank you to the audio engineers and creators here for the use of their soundtracks that they've made, which we use for segment transitions and intro audio. If you'd like to find out more about what I do, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/@thedannation in my series Ancient Lore, a recapture of the spirit of my original podcast, The Ancient of Lore. Until next Friday, let's keep living in the past.